After very careful consideration, I've decided to follow my counsel's advice and not testify or answer any of the questions today.
Former IRS official Lois Lerner refusing to testify last May about her role in the targeting of conservative groups seeking tax-exempt status. This after the Treasury Department's Inspector General found 298 applications had been singled out for special review, including 100% of groups with Tea Party or Patriot in their name, but only 30% of groups with Progress or Progressive. Now, Republican Congressman Darrell Issa, chair of the powerful House Oversight Committee, wants Lerner to testify again Wednesday based on new information he has. Chairman Issa, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Well, thanks for having me back, and thanks for covering what we believe is going to be a good fact-finding hearing.
All right, well, let's talk about that, because when you recalled Lois Lerner under subpoena to testify again this coming Wednesday, her lawyer said you can call her, but she's not going to testify. She's not going to answer any questions, continue to take the Fifth. But I understand you have some late-breaking news.
We do. Her attorney indicates now that she will testify. It's been a back-and-forth negotiation, but quite frankly, we believe that the evidence we've gathered causes her, in her best interest, to be someone who should testify.
But let me make sure. Lois Lerner, former IRS official who took the Fifth last May, will testify before your committee.
According to her attorney.
This will be on Wednesday?
It'll be on Wednesday.
What changed your mind? Was it, did you give her immunity for her testimony? Was she frightened by the possibility of contempt? What changed her mind?
Well, we really don't know. What we do know is that during the intervening period, we've interviewed all the people around her to build a case for why she is at the center of this targeting, why it wasn't Cincinnati, as you said in your opener, it wasn't liberal and conservative groups. It was groups targeted first by their name, Patriot or Tea Party, and then later, at Lois Lerner's insistence, by some objective statements. But for the most part, it continued to target conservative groups.
A couple of quick housekeeping questions. You did not offer her immunity. She's not going to get immunity for this testimony.
We did not.
Is it your understanding that she will answer all questions that you and the committee have about her involvement in the targeting of conservative groups?
That's our understanding. And as you know, our committee did vote that she had waived her Fifth Amendment rights when she made verbatim statements under oath about not having broken any rules and regulations and authenticated other statements.
All right. Let's get to where the rubber hits the road. What questions do you have for Lois Lerner? What are you going to ask her? What do you hope she's going to tell you?
Well, Chris, we know what she did in most cases. What we don't know is why she did it. What we do understand, of course, is this is someone who came from the Federal Election Commission. She came with a bias toward groups having to disclose. 501c4s are different in that because they do not primarily do electioneering, if you will, they do not have to disclose their donors. And that seems to be one of the questions that could lead us to understand why a liberal individual who favored disclosure wanted to make sure that Tea Party groups had to disclose who their donors were.
Now, when you say you want to know why she did it, does that mean you want to know, does this end with her or does it go higher up than her?
Well, that's certainly a big part of it. Is we know a lot of people she coordinated with, some of the things she said, how they either acquiesced to it or chafed against the things she was asking them to do. We do really want to know that burning question of who else knew about it, who else coordinated, and candidly, I think the American people want to know that it won't happen again. And that's going to be the harder part for Ways and Means Committee and others to do, is to put in checks and balances so that no one person, if it is in fact one person, can ever lead the targeting of somebody for audits or for this kind of treatment of not giving them a fair yes or no on an application.
Let me ask you, and obviously when she testifies Wednesday, you're going to know a lot more about this. Do you think it's possible that it's just one person that this targeting began, it didn't end, but began with Lois Lerner?
Well, there were other people who knew or should have known better and went along with it. But certainly she was in a powerful position and very well could have been mostly acting on her own. But again, there should have been safeguards to see this. The accumulation of not just some, but every single application, if it included Tea Party or Patriot, that flies in the face of managers doing their job to oversee somebody at the IRS. You've got to hold people accountable, knowing that they're human, that there will be people doing wrong in government. There There have to be checks and balances. And if it's the IRS, you'd better believe the American people, from the ACLU to the NRA, across the spectrum, want to make sure that politics stay out of the IRS.
Now, we have received a draft copy of a report that's been written by the House Republicans on your committee, and I want to put up part of that. In the executive summary, you, or the House Republicans, say she was keenly aware of acute political pressure to crack down on conservative-leaning organizations. Congressman Issa, pressure from whom?
That's one of our questions. She says things like they for pressure, and so emails indicate that there was pressure. We don't know whether it was the president shaking his fingers at the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court over Citizens United, or whether it was
during the State of the Union address.
During the State of the Union. Where she felt the pressure, only she can tell us what she thought that pressure was.
The report also cites a newly discovered email from September 16, 2010, in which Lerner discusses how to check whether groups seeking tax-exempt status are engaged in improper political activity. This is an email to other people in the IRS, and she says, quote, "We need to have a plan. We need to be cautious so it isn't a per se political project." What do you think that email shows?
Well, it's a series of emails, and when you read them in context, what you realize is she's trying to walk back any kind of ability for someone to look at the record and say, aha, this was political targeting, and yet it clearly is political targeting.
Now, there is a new effort underway. The IRS promulgated a regulation under which it would impose new boundaries on what these 501c4s, that's under the tax code. These are social welfare groups applying for tax-exempt status, new limits on how much political activity they can be involved in. And the administration and the IRS has sold this as a reaction to the scandal. Like, this is what we're doing to try to clear up the scandal. I gather you've gotten information that this began long before the scandal broke.
Exactly, Chris. Lois Lerner was part of the project of targeting conservative groups, delaying and cracking down on existing ones, and then this rule change was worked on all the way back at that point. To a great extent, we believe this is the result of Citizens United, that this is their attempt to get what they don't have and couldn't get at the FEC through the IRS.
On Super Bowl Sunday, Bill O'Reilly asked President Obama about the IRS targeting of conservative groups, and here is that exchange.
There were some boneheaded decisions out of a
but
local
no mass
office.
corruption.
Not even mass corruption, not even a smidgen of corruption.
Okay.
Now, there are 6 current investigations going on of the IRS scandal, 4 inside Congress, 2 inside the administration, 1 in Treasury, 1 in the Justice Department. Couple of questions. 1, have any of those investigations been completed and cleared the IRS of wrongdoing? And what do you think of the president stating there's not a smidgen of corruption?
Well, he'll have to define smidgen and corruption for all of us, because there certainly is real evidence that there was wrongdoing, and that wrongdoing was not in Cincinnati, but in fact in Washington, D.C.
Let me just point out just quickly that when you talk about Cincinnati, the initial allegation was this was a rogue office, an IRS office in Cincinnati, and that they were responsible for all of this. Go ahead.
Exactly, and that's where the president is reintroducing things that have already been disproven. But let's understand, this is an administration that wants to have you believe a video launched the Benghazi murders, when in fact that was disproven. And even after it was reintroduced by this administration again and again, including by this president, Senator Feinstein and the Select Intelligence Committee in the Senate, led by Democrats, have made it clear that the factors that led to that had a lot more to do with terrorism than it ever would a video.
All right, that brings up